Turk of the Year is usually a challenging category because it's the best person of the year, and there's tons of jerks of the year as nominees. But finding the do-gooders are a little bit more difficult. But a lot of you had interesting nominations, and then obviously the hosts here did, and then we'll tell you who won overall. But I'm gonna go to the community first. So this person got a ton of votes in our YouTube community. Beau of the Fifth Column, Justin King. Interesting. So they explained, the community did, that he's a political commentator who gives back to the community, so we like that. He is the best combat and foreign policy commentator, one member wrote, that we have on the left. He also just raised over $10,000 for a women's domestic violence shelter to make sure the older kids had a tablet and some internet access along with headphones and a gift card. Then he cuts a check for the rest to the shelter. He does it every year. All right, Beau of the Fifth Column. Did not expect that. Shows up on our list. I like it, and I like how you guys contribute and get us thinking in unorthodox ways, in different ways than we did here. So that's terrific. Now, the next one's very important. Doctors and medical professionals in Gaza, and a lot of people nominated them, and obviously very logical. I don't have to explain it much to you guys, given the harrowing circumstances that they're in, and a lot of the hospitals are under siege, and they have stayed there knowing that they can get killed to help others. Many people nominated UAW and SAG-AFTRA strikers. I had a similar but a little bit different nomination, which I'll get to a little bit later. And obviously it was the year of the strike in a lot of ways. UAW and SAG-AFTRA all delivering major victories. And I love that they fought back more than anything else. And the fact that they won on top and it got seemingly great deals was terrific, not just for them, but for all workers in America. So thank you guys to all the strikers. And then Bisan Oda is a Palestinian filmmaker best known for her social media videos documenting the 2023 war in the Gaza Strip that we're seeing now, or the destruction more than a war. And one member stated, Bisan Odin, for opening our eye to what is happening in the hospitals and refugee camps in Gaza, despite being targeted herself by the IDF. Wael El Dadu for being the bravest damn journalist in the world, despite being targeted and having almost his entire family murdered by the IDF. He went back to work the next day, selfless. So both the medical workers and the journalists in Gaza. So that is unsurprising that they came up on Turks of the Year list. Now let's go to our list. Let's go to John first.
Yes, couldn't agree more about that. Both a professional journalist as well as a civilian, like citizen journalist, I think super important. And so many journalists have died in Gaza already that it doesn't get talked about enough. But I went in a different direction. I tried to look back over the year and thought, who in America was doing good work on important issues? And it was noticeably harder than in previous years, and I don't like admitting that. I hope that I'm not just being cynical. Perhaps a lot of names are occurring to you, but I did come up with a few, 3 of them, in fact, the Tennessee 3. So they are collectively my Turk of the Year. That is Justin Pearson, Justin Jones, Gloria Johnson, who earlier this year, following one of the many mass shootings in America that happen and nothing is done, used their positions inside the Tennessee state legislature to allow activists to come in and try to get the Republican supermajority there to do literally anything about gun violence. And as a result of that, they were like effectively censured, and then 2 out of the 3, both the Justins, were expelled. And thankfully, they are both back in their positions. But they face not only being expelled, but also some of the most utterly condescending and racist talking points from the speaker and other Republicans in the House. They were mocked and attacked by right-wing media around the country, and all for just trying to represent their constituents on a topic, gun violence, that the Republicans in Tennessee had shown they just weren't going to do literally anything about. And so now, thanks to the Republicans there, they have much elevated positions and will probably accomplish a lot of good in a number of different areas. So for doing this work at great risk, temporarily at least being expelled, the Tennessee 3 are my Turks of the Year.
All right, great pick. Rashad, let's go to you.
Okay, mentors, all right? So this is a very personal story for me, but it also has translation to almost anybody. I've always considered myself to be a decent mentor, trying to take opportunities with organizations, etc. And I learned something about 3 months ago. There's a guy who works for me here in Atlanta, young guy, very good guy. And I realized that he had been working for me for about a year, and I had never taken him out to lunch. I had not taken him, to just talk about what his dreams are, what his goals are. Those things are important to people. He just graduated college. And the only reason why organizations exist for mentorship is because we fail to seize the moment, the opportunity to mentor those who are around us. And so I encourage everyone to become a mentor. It's real easy. The word mentor means provide guidance, a little bit of direction, and all of a sudden you become a mentor. And we may not need so many organizations to do it for us. And so if you are a mentor already, hats off to you. If you're not, find you at least one person in 2024 and pour the best you inside of them.
All right, excellent. And Dave, you're up.
All right, I guess it's the year of the state legislators. My two nominees for Turks of the year are Melissa Hortman, the Speaker of the House of the Minnesota House, and Carrie Dietzick, the Majority Leader of the Minnesota Senate. You can ignore almost all the letters between the two D's, and it's Dietzick. So while a lot of people are talking and dreaming of what we can do through legislation to improve this country and make it more progressive and responsive to the needs of the citizens, these two ladies in Minnesota passed laws expanding workers' rights and safety, protecting abortion rights, created a paid family leave program in Minnesota, expanded voting rights, gun safety laws, clean energy support, adjustments to the law to improve general fairness, bolstered the social safety net, money for affordable housing and construction, money for school lunches, money for nursing homes. Shall I go on? Well, I can't go on. That's my list. That's a great accomplishment. They did it mostly under the radar because the national news doesn't often cover something that's going on in one state. And on top of this, Carrie Dietzick had cancer surgery earlier in the year while these votes were going on. Now, sure, there were favorable wins in Minnesota. The Democrats controlled both houses and the governorship, and they had a good, healthy budget. But that doesn't guarantee anything. There have been times where at the federal level, Democrats have had the trifecta and the budget at the federal level doesn't matter. There's plenty of money and they still can't do anything at the federal level. And many other states in the country have favorable wins and they still don't get nearly this much positive legislation passed. So my Turks of the year are these two ladies from the Minnesota state government, Melissa Hortman and Carrie Dietzick.
These are great picks, and I love the ones that Dave mentioned because they're not in the news that much, and those are incredible accomplishments. And it goes to show you, it turns out there is something you could do if you wanted to do it. And so I love that. I think those are great picks. My picks are also a pair, the two Seans, Shawn Fain and Sean O'Brien. So that's the head of the Teamsters, that's Sean O'Brien on the right, and the head of the UAW, that's Shawn Fain on the left. And so these two badasses picked some fights this year, and they won them. And we've been looking for leaders, whether they're Democratic leaders, union leaders, any leaders on the left, to step up and take the fight to the other side. And they finally did it. And we've been doing Young Turks for 21 years. And finally, we've got union leaders who are fighting against giant corporate power. And they proved that if you take them on, turns out you can win. For so long, leaders on the left have been compliant, bow their heads. Oh, there's nothing we could do, there's nothing we could do. Well, Shawn Fain and Sean O'Brien proved that's not remotely true. It turns out there's a lot you can do. Get caught trying. And I also love their attitude. Shawn Fain didn't just do what every union leader my whole life has done, just go kiss the Democratic president's ass and go, oh, please help us. No, he's like, no credit, okay? And he had such a tough stance on him that all of a sudden Biden showed up on the picket line. Obama had talked about how, oh man, if there's collective bargaining is at risk. I'm gonna get my working boots on and I'm gonna join the picket line. Zero, nothing. And it's not against Obama. That's just how Democratic leaders have been my entire life. But Joe Biden found a way to get out on that picket line because Spain was tough on him. And he used his leverage. He didn't just give away the store the minute a Democratic leader walked by. It was the correct strategy. And then when Trump tried to steal the thunder and come in and pretend that he was for workers, Sean Fain kicked his ass left and right and made it abundantly clear that Trump has never been for the workers. So he took no prisoners. Sean O'Brien was the same with the Teamster strike. They got great deals for their workers. And then Sean O'Brien on top took on the guy I call Senator Waingro from Oklahoma, John Wayne Mullen. Fine, that's his actual name. It sounds like a serial killer. Anyways, they nearly got into fisticuffs in the Senate hearings. Bernie had to settle it down. The fighting left has finally arrived. So I'm thrilled about that. And by the way, they were also nominated by the YouTube community and by folks on TYT.com as well. So before I tell you who the overall winner is and give you the percentages for the community voting, let's talk it through a little bit. So Dave got me to waver a little bit with his picks. It's so good. Tennessee 3 was a great pick, but I picked the two Seans because I've never seen anyone on our side fight back like this, and it was just a pleasure to watch. But what do you guys think?
I mean, I would have picked them, except I knew that if I didn't, someone would. So I felt like it was safe not to, which is why I went in a different direction. But also, for me, I liked having activists on the one side, actual elected officials actually working together. I thought that was great. That's why I went in the direction of Tennessee 3. My main thing, and I'm really happy that you pointed out yours too, because I was not familiar that they'd accomplished all that. It is good to remember that there are leaders out there, everyday leaders like Rashad is shining a spotlight on, and it's great to have leaders in the labor movement that we can see the strategy they're pursuing, we can see the successes, we can see the next steps already brewing in that particular area, because it really does feel like there are fewer sort of aspirational, motivational figures for us to look to. There's great movements, which is important, and sometimes that's more important. Like you have all these different people engaging in these strikes across so many different industries. You've got nurses and you've got teachers and you have the screenwriters and you have the actors and you have in the auto manufacturers as well. That's great too. I feel like we have fewer elected officials that we can point to as people who are in the fight that are trying and maybe not even succeeding. They're up against so much, but they're trying. I feel like we have fewer now than we've had since pre-Bernie, honestly. That's how I feel, and it's kind of a depressing thought. It is good to have this sort of opportunity to remember that there are good people out there, but I feel like we are lacking that sort of leadership especially amongst elected officials.
Yeah, I mean today on the Young Turks, Anna and I gave credit to Ed Markey and Richard Blumenthal for writing a strongly worded letter to Tesla. That's what we're down to, praising strongly worded letters. Okay, so this country is so hungry for a fighter and a leader on the left. And so we've given you some options here, but I believe one person is gonna rise probably for 2028. That'll make a giant difference. That's my sense of it. Rashad, what do you think?
I want to say this. I think John is right. There's this sense that dynamic leadership has somehow taken a back seat, not as aggressive, not as vigilant. But I will say we're working inside of a decentralized model of leadership. So where we used to look for a great state or national champion, we may look for a great hyper-local champion or multiple hyper-local champions. And back to the dynamic of mentorship, I give an example, Cenk. Every single time I see Cenk, he mentors me. Why is that? Because he takes time to make sure we're gonna have lunch, we're gonna have a cup of coffee, we're gonna have a conversation. There's gonna be guidance. And I'm able to call the brother into time, talk to him about the ways of the world, etc. Those moments are moments of leadership as well. So I don't want to discount those moments as if they're not powerful and impactful, just like somebody who's a prominent leader. But that's where the leadership comes from, because you got to build a bench of leadership prior to the public moment. And so without the dynamic of support, mentorship, leadership at levels that cannot be seen, you will never produce the levels that are seen.
First, thank you, Rashad. That's incredibly kind of you to say.
Sure.
But you guys are right. It is very telling that we don't have a single national political leader on any of our lists. You guys didn't have one, we didn't have one. They were all state level or union leaders, et cetera. Anyways, Dave, what do you think?
Well, all true what everyone's saying. The three of you are kind of the same. Yes, we know that positive change comes from the ground up. It's people movements. But when the elected officials do finally come through, whether it's FDR or whatever, I go back to 80 years, or Carrie Dietzig and Melissa Horton, then okay, that's great. That affects millions of people. All the people in the state of Minnesota are gonna have a better life because of that. So many more than the UAW members. And I know that that has knock-on effects at other unions, but when they come through, it's a lot of people's lives who got better, which is why I went with some elected officials.
Yeah. Well, but Dave, you're right about that, but that's why, wouldn't it be amazing if it happened at the federal level where it could affect 330 million people?
Yeah. Can I throw out sort of a two more, like both a Turk and Jerk kind of, because there's an area that I don't think we have anyone in. I do think, I don't know if it really fits under the rubric of Turk of the Year, but the very productive journalism is all the different journalists that worked on the stories, initially having to do with Clarence Thomas, but then eventually spreading to corruption stories covering the majority of the Supreme Court. I think there was some great work done there that caused a lot of Americans to think about the justices differently than they perhaps had been. I think it helps to put a few cracks in the myth that these are like divinely inspired fonts of judicial wisdom. No. They're regular people. They're people with political thoughts, political biases, personal failings, financial aspirations. And so I think that was great work. And then I would couple that with, I think Clarence Thomas deserves at least an honorable mention for Jerk of the Year, because the dude has not given an inch after all of these revelations. And he's not the only one. The other justices have been shown to have accepted gifts and gone on trips and all of that. And not just at the Supreme Court level, there's been follow-up research showing how many judges at the appeals court and the district court have been sent off on these vacations under the guise of like speaking engagements and things like that. But we have a major problem with our Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas, and look, I guess Roberts has given him sort of an assist in saying that all they're gonna do is put out this little statement about ethics. There's gonna be no oversight, there's going to be no major reforms. He's not gonna be recusing himself on anything. There's definitely some jerkiness to be had in the Supreme Court as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because, and people might think it's ironic, but it isn't. That journalists come up almost every year for Turk of the Year. The reason why people might think it's ironic is because we do a lot of media criticism on the shows, right? But that's the juxtaposition that's so interesting, because it's not ironic. We love journalists. We want great journalism and we applaud great journalism. We're worried that in mainstream media, we're not getting a lot of it. That's why we do the critiques that we do. But John's absolutely right. ProPublica and breaking those stories about the Supreme Court Justice, particularly Clarence Thomas, was amazing. By the way, The Lever, David Sirota's organization, breaking a ton of stories about the East Palestine train disaster. So many stories about infrastructure and the government doing things wrong. And David Sirota's on the left, but he's criticizing the Biden administration. That's a Democratic administration. That's good journalism. That's honest and challenging the people in power, no matter who they are. And then, of course, the journalists in Russia are some of the bravest in the world. They are constantly falling out of windows, etc. Putin is just absolutely brutal to real reporters, and I just can't imagine the courage that they have to do journalism despite all that, and great journalism. And then finally, as the people pointed out in the community, the journalists that are in Gaza are unreal. The courage is breathtaking, and I've lost track. I know. Well, last we had covered it about a week ago. It was at least 68 journalists killed. It's probably near 100 now. But I've lost track of the count because it's unbelievable how many journalists that they're killing. Let alone Shireen Abu Akleh, who was killed by the IDF before the Gaza war, and by the way, to Israeli journalists too that are brave enough and courageous enough to call out what their own government is doing wrong. So credit to all of them. Okay, now let me go to your guys' votes. So at tyt.com, it was a clear winner. Well, there was a clear second place too, but the winner was doctors and medical professionals in Gaza. They came in at 46%. Sean Payne and Sean O'Brien agreeing with me, 32%. Remember, they had no idea who my pick was. They were nominated by the community and they came in second at 32%. UAW and SAG-AFTRA strikers at 18% and Bisan Oda at 3%. And then now let's go to Young Turks YouTube community, where there was an astounding 36,500 votes. Turk of the Year usually gets less votes because there's so many jerks and not enough Turks. But Bo, the fifth column, look, even if it's just his fans, I applaud them. Our fans had us win tons of polls, and I thought that meant something, and it means something when Justin wins Turk of the Year in our YouTube community. So great job there.
Well, and really fast, I would just add on, there's a lot of crossover, I think, in the audiences. I mean, people in the Damage Report are always talking about the videos. I have people sending me videos on Discord and stuff like that. I think, I don't know that we necessarily agree on everything politically, but I think that there's quite a bit of like philosophical and ideological overlap, certainly amongst the audiences.
Totally, I mean, that's near 20,000 votes for him. That is amazing. So great job, Justin, on the performance this year. And then doctors and medical professionals came in second at 26%, UAW and SAG-AFTRA strikers third. You see a theme here, and then Sean Payne and Sean O'Brien at 2% coming in fourth. Okay, so last time for Jerk of the Year, I concluded that my pick was the correct one. Now, of course, the YouTube community and TYT community also agreed with me as well, tyt.com community. In this case, I'm not going with my own pick. I'm going with what the community overall picked, not just in YouTube community, but on our website as well, which is the medical professionals and doctors in Gaza. So there are official Turk of the Year, and my God, I mean, they deserve every accolade in the world, and they deserve every kind of award. This isn't much at all, but we appreciate them, we love them, and no matter what side of the conflict you agree with, I hope you're on the side of peace and on the side of innocent civilians, and not on the side of Israel or certainly not Hamas, right? It's not about picking sides, it's not about picking identities, it's not about picking countries. It's about protecting innocent civilians on both sides. And that, who does that better than doctors and medical professionals, especially as 29,000 bombs were dropped in Gaza, for them to stay and to take care of the people who needed them most. Incredible courage, and our hats are off to Turk of the Year, well earned. We appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. If you become a member, you get to watch all this ad-free, except for, of course, this ad. Still, hit the join button below.